Okay, today's episode. New episodes until 2022 will be accessible to members, and I encourage the listeners to support the project. I would like to speak about an idea that is very profound. It is personally one of my own fascinations of this world that we find ourselves in. The title is An Attention That Found Gods in the Void. And there's something so nice about that title, because there is a truth in it. That in a giant void landscape, man's consciousness is trying to escape for. That means the underlying meaning to everything, in accordance to what is visible or what is invisible, is absence. That means or a vacuum is the silence, containing all sounds, or the stillness containing all movement. You see, even though we are human beings, even though we are, let's say 50% an object, 50% a subject to ourselves, 50% we're a body that is projecting a mind, and 50% we're a mind that is projecting a body. That means there is two ways we are being the same moment, just like we have two different eyes that see the same moment, same view. We have the mind functioning, in some sense functioning the mind, not in accordance to free will, but in accordance to nature's will. It's as if the reason we exist as individuals is for this individual point of attention to interact with the realm. But as it goes to interact with the realm, it discovers an underlying emptiness, which I'm trying to point to. This emptiness causes man to become a creative creature. That means if there was no space to do anything new, there would be nothing has arrived, and because some great men, many great men in history, they have emphasized that novelty is the key, that the new is truth's newest update, in a sense. Or the new is where truth is hiding. As a human being, the idea has arose that in emptiness we have animated personalities, and then these personalities have animated, in some sense, superior relationships with the world, known pretty much it's just how much your attention is on an idea until that idea has become you. We are creatures that our environment defines us, of at least a percentage of us. If you have a familiarity with your own eyes and your nature and your own free will, the environment doesn't bulldozer over you. I'll give you an example of this. For example, I think many children and many human beings entering the system, the system of humanity, will come to find that the world cannot see their inner realms. When the world cannot see your inner realms, one cannot expect the outer realms to be like the inner realms, and so the attention is put in a multidimensional position. That means we are multidimensionally living in the singular dimension that we so call life. So, I would say that someone in the chat section said it's a virtual reality simulation. It's a virtual reality, period. I will say, dear listeners, it is not a simulation. Why? It is not only a simulation. Why? Because a simulation cannot exist without the truth. The illusion cannot exist without the truth. The illusion intelligent has to have a true existence in order to even be here. That means there has to be some part of the human intelligence that is real, and then it is from that reality having a comparative reference point to fathom the unreal. Right, so anytime a human being says none of this is real, it's firstly it's the easiest thing to do because it's a sort of subjective nihilism. But it's also that the simulations end. It's this weird situation in this life where everything is temporary, including the concept of temporary. We find ourselves in a physical space. This space is accessible through sight. Sight is, in some sense, the glow of our mind. The glow of our mind is the awareness of the candle flame. That means right now the only way I am able to speak to you, it's as if I am like this object in this world. This object has noticed itself, it has noticed others, it has noticed the world where self and other are found in. And this object has reached a point where, like me personally, I've reached a point where subjects are paint. That means it is very obvious to me that whatever human beings say, whatever creatures communicate, the silent reality of nature doesn't go anywhere. It is there. It's as if every sound, after stepping out of the silence, enters the silence. This talk I'm giving will end. This biological existence I'm in this moment right now, I'm piloting through, this will also end. And so endings are like the reason beginnings happen. Beyond dualistic psychology, the world is really meaningless, and I don't know, out of 8 billion human beings on this planet, 8 billion and growing human beings, how many human beings can stand alone with the aloneness of the universe? Forget human loneliness. That's nothing compared to mystical states of mind where one realizes intelligence is alone, right? This is a sort of update, I would say, from the Descartesian view of mind-body dualism, but it's like as if the body realizes it is found in the mind. The mind was under the impression that it's found in the body, but the mind will begin to realize that there is something watching it and the body at the same time. That is known in Vedic thought as Atman. Everybody has access to it. This is why the idea of enlightenment, how some people would ask, how long does it take to get enlightened? And Kabir, this very profound yogi, he said half of an instant. What did he mean by that? He meant there is no such thing as half of an instant. What he means is that you are being something and you're living a life in accordance to verbs and nouns that are either too fast or have not slowed down to realize that nature is just an event. This shocked me when I first truly noticed it, but there was also a solace. There was also a sort of peacefulness. I shouldn't say peacefulness, a sort of peace that comes when you actually get to see something for what it is. That's one of the coolest things, I would say. I wouldn't even call it enlightenment, because there's no such thing as enlightenment for a person. That means on the journey of us reacting to the greatest story of whatever truth, we suddenly realize the character in the story is not there. This is anybody who's been interested in spirituality, anyone who's interested in mysticism, the concept of transcendence, enlightenment of any kind in this realm. I will tell you, it all comes down to how much you as a being are willing to see beyond what you're doing. So our eyes, and when I say our eyes, I mean the sight. People should be able to hear now. Pretty much a temporary creature, an object has become a subject to itself. This subject is experiencing life through the object. This subject is wondering this subject is wondering how it is being a subject. It's realizing that how it's being beyond the subject has to do with an internal witness of life, a watcher. That means everybody is watching their moment. Right now, as I'm giving this lecture, I am observing myself. You know what's fascinating? When I speak, I haven't said this much to the audience, but when I speak, I don't feel human or non-human. I don't feel like a concept. And when you move beyond the sphere of conceptual meaning, it's as if a wall broke, a giant wall that was in front of you your whole life. In an instant it broke. It's as if, like, you know, some podcaster borrowed Thor's hammer, you know, to break an ideological barrier. Every person, as Ralph Waldo Emerson would say, can establish a relationship with their soul. Now, the concept of the soul, it is not culture oriented, and let me tell you why. Because there is a huge debate in intellectual circles about the sociological influence on a genetical emergence of attention, right? So it's as if in this world, when you look at human history right now, I'm simply being a human being in 2021 just giving a talk. But if you really zoomed in, if extraterrestrials from the sky, if the eyes in the skies were watching human beings, they would in some sense see a complex history where the things we do so easily now, it took us years to come to, you know. I have even fathomed it when I was looking at biological evolution, like evolutionary biology. I was like, there had to be circumstances in nature where the creature attempted endlessly to update, but it couldn't, as if the hill was too vertical for the creature to climb this. Like, imagine a creature trying to climb a cliff and falling endlessly. I would say that would be a sort of pause of the video game. That means there was energy, but there wasn't consequence. There was no result. Right now, I'm an energetic phenomenon. I mean, aside from my name and who I am and my personality and you know, and how silly and serious I am about the world, it's like there is an energy here. This is undeniable that there is an energetic presence to each of us in the space-time continuum. Now, the relationship of our energy found in the ocean of existential energy. It's a totally different type of life when you live as multidimensional sight, because you are not being encapsulated by the karma of language. You know, there is no such thing as karma if there was no such thing as language. You know, Ludwig Wittgenstein, this incredible, to me he was a continental philosopher, but to Bertrand Russell, probably he came across as an analytical philosopher. You know, this continental philosopher, Ludwig Wittgenstein, just listen to the sentence he says. He says, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. What does that mean? That means the world that we can find meaning in is limited by our language. This is why the introduction of a new concept, which is another way of saying a human being is sharing geometry, new geometrical relationships. I would say this, that in this episode, my attempt is to try to, as a from the human perspective, from the existential perspective, try to suggest what establishing a relationship with the archetype of the Supreme is like. Pretty much in this episode, I'm trying to get out, trying to tell the audiences in cyberspace how I perceive not sociological, but an existential relationship with God. You see, there is these four states of 0, 1, 2, infinity. This is how I have fathomed it. This is the system I have designed, where everything I see in life, its context falls into one of these four. Either the context is empty, either the context is singular, either the context is dualistic, or the concept is infinite, because the moment you have an awareness of duality and you have the roots of a singularity, you have infinity born, right? So the father of infinity, I would say in some sense, is like, you know what it is? It's like the void and the singular gave birth to the dual. The singular and the dual gave birth to the infinite. The dual and the infinite gave birth to the void. And so this is as if like the dimensions are alive and living through their own cycles, that nature is so vast that after some point we have to put away our shorthanded techniques and just watch the real program unfold, right? And so that when you reach this state of mind, you will see conversations happen through people which is not them. And what I mean by this is, I have experienced moments where at the time when it happened, it wasn't important, but years later I understood the significance, that I have had different types of consciousness speak through the same person to me. That means I've been in a conversation with someone, then someone has suddenly said something that in some sense it was as if something else was saying it through them. Now, this doesn't mean that we are just like vessels. We're not like a glove that anything can wear, just higher dimensional beings can just wear and move us. But the thing is that there is karmic expression, meaning that every person has a spherical karmic aura, okay? And this aura of karma, hold on guys, I gotta find a gentler song. This is like, when violins come into the song, that's when like your emotions are about to go roller coaster. Okay, this is my favorite song to dive into the inner realms with. All right, to go further. Usually I speak general. They say like when you say something generally, then it becomes accessible by many. But if you make something specific, only those who have lived through that specificity can comprehend. To make it general, I have to bring the idea towards a personal relationship, meaning that I gotta share certain personal things about how I interact with the logos. And some people listening to this, if it's not your cup of tea, feel free to transition towards another video in cyberspace. But for those who actually want to at least know just one person out of 8 billion, one person's relationship with the divine, and how the divine has communicated not as an individual but as the significance of how the witness moves in the moment. You see, there's a level of life where you're living it as an object, okay? This is a level of life where it's as if the evolutionary creature doesn't know any better. It's as if like when you're a young kid and you fight, as if like another kid in the let's say school when you're super young, then both parents of the of the children take the kids, and in the principal's office the kids apologize and they go back to class and whatever. is this superior force. As an object, you're looking at the result of the moment, how the moment goes forth objectively. Let's say you're someone who you understand you're a subject, but the subject is not clear. What that means is that it's like being a personality, but then suddenly realizing the idea of you is not a physical thing. It's something kept. It's like a flag kept in the air when your attention is on it. You know, so the idea of self, when one realizes that's not physical, and which means 8 billion creatures, 8 billion human beings are non-physically being physical, but that non-physical relationship with themselves is with an idea. So it's as if every person has to put a box on their head in order to be an individual, the box of a subject. Right now, I have to have a name so people can search for the videos on YouTube, you know what I mean? So that I've put the box of the concept of Mr.Within to be an individual in the collective arena. However, when it comes to personal relationships, and I'm going to try to say very directly how I have experienced it. So I went through a phase where the desire of whatever self I am, whatever self I was in this life, went from wanting objects. Like right now, the reason I'm a bit maybe too savagely minimalist in my outer realms is simply because the objects are interesting, but for how long? It's as if, sure, there's a lot of physical things you can do. You can fathom life and see so much room for inventions. Every day I go and I see the world around me, I see endless opportunities for it to update. And in my mind, I'm like, what human being will be born to come and update this in the future, you know? But I'm just saying that it's like once the fascination goes from objects, and I recommend anybody above the age 50, you have to become very cautious and try to wonder about in the relationship of life intelligence beyond an object. Not that it has to be something abstract or imaginary, but just wonder about if there was more than objects here, what would that be like? So I graduated from my physical karma, then I went into my non-physical karma, the karma of my mind. The mind, it's very fascinating. When we look at objects and the body can be pinpointed in time. You're like, yeah, Tuesday I was at that, location, You can pinpoint your body in time, but if you want to pinpoint the mind in time, the mind is not in time, because the mind creates the concept of time. So the mind is a timeless phenomenon, which is like a revelation into the secrets of non-ideological energy and what the experience of that is. So then after you graduate from the karma of your physicality, you go to the karma of your mind, and all those people who are emotional, you have reached this in some sense, right? When I say emotions, because emotions are a transcendental phenomenon. Emotions is like different ocean waves hitting one another. You know what I mean? Imagine there was a parallel universe of Earth, and they had, for example, green oceans instead of blue oceans. And so in that parallel universe of Earth, imagine the two oceans were overlaid on one top of one another, and some enlightened being suddenly saw the ocean and saw two types of oceans, one green, one blue, the opposite, and the waves colliding with one another. You know what I mean? So after you have experienced the simulations of the body's life, you go towards experiencing the simulation of the mind's life. Once you finish the simulations of the mind's life, it's another Sufi way. You can say the Sufis had a term for it. They would say to die before you die, or Saint Francis of Assisi, from Christianity, he in some sense says that it is in dying to self that we are born to eternal life, right? So there is something in this life with how you are being a subject that changes where true I would say experiential revelation activates. And guys, of course, when you listen to me, this is just take this as one person's experience. We have 8 billion different types of DNA here, which ultimately means 8 billion different types of perception. What I mean by the body's karma, the mind's karma, this is how the attention has extended forth into the realm, and it has gotten identified with what it has extended onto. Right, so there's some physical things in life where they keep you physical. You know, it's an attachment ultimately. You know, for example, whether we like it or not, we are attached to eating food, drinking water. You know, we are attached to activities of reproduction, activities of like, cleaning the system. Right, so in different ways we are attached to this realm, but from a multidimensional angle, some attachments are physical and they are through the instinct of necessity. But when it comes to the mind and you have contentment with your necessity, you come to a situation where it's like attachments of ideas, in which what it means is every person is clothed in all the different ideas that have formed to their awareness throughout life so far. That means everybody is dressed up in thoughts, even though there's no such thing as a thought, but it's like we're dressed up in an internal overlay of meaning. Now, once you follow your synchronicity, and when I say follow your synchronicity, I'm a bit old school when it comes to spirituality. What I mean by that is that for me, spirituality is trying to see or trying to understand what the whole universal moment is saying, not what it is doing. Because we have the faculty of mind, we need an intelligent answer. Once, through a sort of honesty and sincerity resonance, the person trusts how the intelligence of the day unfolds, and they stop having an attachment to how life has to be, and like a chess game, they let life move first and then their mind to engage in ideological engagement, you know. Also in the not chat section, in the title, I've written an attention that found gods in the void, lecture on sincere observations of the temporary. is what attaches, which links us to phenomena. The more a person transitions beyond their physical karma and their non-physical karma, what takes place is trust in a selfhood that is shapeless, that is unconditional. So you can say that the whole wonder to follow the spirit of something is in some sense to come into a realization that intelligence is not just local to the brain, that there is a spacious intelligence in the reality taking place which administers the precision of how history has to be lived. You know what it is? It feels like the human experience is a project. It honestly feels like a project. And it feels like it has project managers, but it feels like these project managers are not visible to those who are in the project, in the simulation of the realm, right? Because on some level, objects are just objects. They don't have to mean anything in the sense that like the color blue doesn't mean anything. It just is the color blue, you know? So in that sense, when we look at physical existence, it doesn't have to mean anything. Because it doesn't have to mean anything and the mind is imposing the meaning, just like when a person reads a book, because the mind imposes the meaning into the world and it doesn't have a meaning, it means that meaninglessly the world is okay in functioning. And when you realize that reality can go forth in known ways and unknown ways, and you become content with both, pretty much all your attachments in this life evaporate. My relationship with the moment and the void has turned into something where when I live, when I move, I know that there is something else here, but that something else is not a something. You know, it's not form-based. So it means we are as a subjective object in symbiosis with space, with intelligent space. You know what it's like? It's like while we each are our own unique being, a giant, intelligent, invisible cloud is over the species. It's as if what we think is the atmosphere is actually a being. So it's as if we walk into a space, but that space is the mind of a higher dimension. So in some sense, we are bound with the mind of the higher dimension in the same way that imagine you had a dream and inside your dream, one of those characters became conscious that it's in your dream. That character would realize that when God wakes up, man does not exist. When God wakes up from the dream of life. So that's how deep the symbiosis with the collective intelligence of the universal sector can go. And we as human beings, how prepared for this are we? We are not. You know, our species is bewildered, you know? That means in certain ancient texts, like not ancient texts, but in like old school books, there was this way of phrasing they had where they're like, man's just a bewildered beast. You know what that means? That means our ancestors were just freaked out. Like they were freaking out in this world, not knowing why it's here, why it's happening, or how it can even have meaning. They were just here. Do you know, it was as if you take a cat from outside of a box, you know, and throw it in your living room. And so the cat is thrown into a world where it's like, oh my God, you know, there's so much light, and their walls are bigger. You know, it's as if your house is like a bigger box. What I'm trying to say, you know. You know, a lot of animals in nature, they roam the wilderness as if nature is their home. We human beings are the only animal that intentionally goes and lives in a box, you know, you know, four-walled homes. you start looking for signs. And when I say you look for signs, you start observing how your attention moves in the moment, and that is the greatest sign. This means all those people who are being fortune tellers, all those people who are being psychics, all those people who are doing this, I will recommend to you, you do that as a free social service. This whole new age approach of, you gotta, in some sense, this is why the word spirituality is heavy. I decided to take the designer angle. Because in the observation of the designs of existence, eventually the serious will be found. That means we gotta serve civilization. We gotta build systems that allow human beings to focus on their strengths and their talents, while at the same time being able to survive in the movement of the human effort. Shamans back in the day, I want you to imagine you are a Native American kid running in the forest back in the day. There is no technology, there is no social media. The only thing you can post is like an actual post, And so let's say you are in a tribe, and the tribe is incredible, and it's this very calm, let's say great peaceful community, loving community. And then because let me tell you why, the more we go back in history, human beings were strangely in tribal affairs compassionate. Why? Because first of all, something like that hadn't happened before, and at the same time, man has to protect his species. It's part of the greater honor of a human being. Okay, it's as if you defend yourself, the honor of yourself, you defend the honor of your family and friends, and then you're like, what else? And then you see the honor of your species. Definitely in the sense that in the future that we may be challenged by other life forms beyond our atmosphere. So when that happens, the species needs to have union. Union means, in some sense, an ability to look at the same direction of progress as a collective. It is the honor of the lifetime. Back in the day, knights, to take the imagery to this, like knights, they wore giant heavy armor and went trying to do acts of justice. Not all knights, but and they tried to preserve justice in the realm, right? And that would give them honor to try to do the right thing and the best thing in every moment, right? That honor has been stripped away from human beings who they are trying to live, which they're not trying to live. It's as if the allure of sociological delusion. I don't know how to say it. It's as if like emotions are nice, but when the species faces the void and extinction, there's greater things to be done. That honor is reinstilled. The knight back in the day, the sense of the justice was like, I'm doing this for the good of the kingdom. But we don't have that as a species yet. We don't have that sense of a kingdom, and it doesn't have to be a king. I had this mentality that if there were kingdoms to arise, it wouldn't even be democratic. It would just be in the sense that the king of any of future kingdoms is the future. That means all our ability as a species goes into fathoming what kind of future are we going towards and retaliating against that through a collective strategy that allows not for the love of warfare, but makes the warfare in some sense go to love. And when I say love, this means an intelligent way of living. It means no longer bloodshed, meaningless bloodshed in the realm, and it becomes something where advancement is the only thing left. It is like as if we are thrown in the cage of an elemental reality, and we're like, what do we do? And to climb out of that cage is to reach the epitome of the opportunities available in front of us. Right? And that's why I'm saying the importance of the significance of the moment. So my relationship with my own metaphysics and how I have fathomed the universal intelligence, call it God, call it whatever you like, but or don't call it anything, it becomes something. My relationship is that for me, the moment is alive, and it in some sense, its communication is how my attention moves before I am a personality, and I watch that. That means I would probably say maybe in 2015 it was as if I woke up from the simulation of the idea of me here. And it's been a while now where it's like the observer is the presence that is so too simple to have even an opinion. So you become, in some sense, the winds of evolution are roaming the realm of, whatever form you have found yourself in now. If the person is not attached to their inner realms, they can observe so much. Their visualization will literally, like, there was this anime comic series, Dragon Ball Z or something, where the character would suddenly, like, become Super Saiyan, When a person doesn't identify as a thought in the moment and realizes that there is a directness to how experience is happening and is being the moment, you literally access the observer state. So anybody, if people have understood me so far, you probably everyone here is aware that they are aware in this moment. Starting from that, then you notice and look at the content of your awareness. Then knowledge becomes significant. After you study the known, after in this life you look at what you know, then you reach a point where you're looking at what you don't know. And that's where the clues and the signs of the universal intelligence appear. They don't appear in egoic certainty of an absolutist ideal. They are found when there is a simplicity enough to watch the moment without interference of the free will. Because then the free will know what is from it moving and what is from the other moving. Metaphysics is perhaps the most important branch of philosophy, because philosophy means the love of wisdom, literally. The words mean love of wisdom. And what is wisdom? Wisdom is truth. And what is truth? It is the actual. And when I say actual, that means it's as if, like, imagine an extraterrestrial lands on the earth in a busy plaza, and people are like, whoa, this some next level alien is here, and this alien is in some sense designed in a way, its body, where it appears to every person in the most beautiful way, their beautiful color their mind has fathomed somewhere. So everybody on the planet who looks at this alien is like, oh my god, such beauty, We will see that there is more to life. That's the great wisdom of man. That means if in the future extraterrestrials land and they're like, hey, human beings, we're your gods, we'll be like, nah. We'll be like, yo, you aliens, go sit by that tree and meditate like the Buddha, quickly go. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to animate what it would be like if the aliens The concept of God is such a unique idea because the soul is God. So everybody has a soul. So the concept of God is like you can't worship God because God is within everything. So people who go worship in like a certain building or a certain thing, that's for cultural preservation probably. Because in reality, where else can truth be? It is everywhere. The religious framework makes you feel as if you are being watched by truth all the time. But when you begin to realize the truth is what is moving itself in front of itself, or as Swami Krishnananda, this yogi, says this incredible quote, he says, religion is God remembering himself. That means mankind is the idea of a human being is a phase of universal, of the nature of universal intelligence. From the shamanic angle, the guy in mind is guiding you to where you need to be as a being. From the yogic angle, from the yogic mind, the universe is the dream of truth. That's really mysticism, is pretty much human beings that were brave enough to respond to the simulation directly. That means for me, yogis and meditators, people are like, oh, look at this peaceful, monk, just meditating all day. I'll be like, that man is a grand warrior. That man, like, let me tell you why. Like, the Buddha to me was one of the most advanced human beings on this planet. Why? Because he saw something, and something within him, you can say a sort of historically divine impulse, commanded him to find a resolution to suffering, to death, to disease and old age. That means he was one of the most important problem solvers on the planet. To have the precaution as an advanced communicator and pilot of your attention that feedback is necessary. Feedback is points of update, I would say. Every day that we are alive, the day is trying to be more than yesterday. In order for it to be more than yesterday, it can't just be a day lived with trusting and known strategy. One has to engage with the unknown to know they are alive. This is why I think, a lot of, people in high school, kids in high school, they, in some sense, sneak out of the house to go party. Why? Because it is the calling of the unknown. And the unknown evolves your character. If you engage it in your inner realms, it evolves your insight, like how much you're aware that's what sight is. But if you engage it in the outer realms, it builds it pretty much updates your Iron Man suit of self-identity. And I don't know how many people realize that their reaction to their own emotions is based on the story they tell themselves. The story you tell yourself is your life. There's a poet named Omar Khayyam. He says, be happy for this moment. This moment is your life. It's as if in that sentence he's saying, whatever you are, wherever you are, be content, be accepting of your own existential access to the realm. We take it for granted, we think our eyes are just, just like, like the wind. But I will tell you, we are like advanced technology that the world is waiting for. Every human being has an advanced activation point, you can say. But it depends on if the circumstances are right, or if higher dimensional beings care to pull the cat out of the box, So, dear listeners, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. Okay. Take this. Temporary human beings. We find a world in front of our eyes. This world ultimately has to be engaged, because why else would we exist? To have a relationship with existence. But as we have a relationship with existence, we realize we are simultaneously having a relationship with non-existence. And I feel every human being is actually content with change in their psychology. Why? Because in life, there's an opportunity cost to every decision. That means if you do one thing, all the other things you could have done, you don't do. So we, in some sense, when we make a decision, let's say you see a situation, and the situation you find in your inner realms, like, I don't know, very quickly, 5 ways to respond to that situation. Now, in those 5 ways to respond to that situation, you can ultimately choose one. So it's as if 4 types of you that could have responded to this situation have died, you know? So what I'm trying to say is that in every moment we are witnessing life and death. And we are witnessing change, because that's what it is. It's like life and death is just how we interpreted universal change. Fear is man-made, but in some sense, the explorer's vision stands. You know, every person listening to me right now, we are all explorers in an unknown world. And we know this much, you know, and I'll tell you, we know nothing. As a species, we don't know anything. You know, we know what we have kept significant for us, but the evolution of attention, you know, in the future, the coming cyberspace era, you know, the geometrical revolution that will happen, where human beings will see all knowledge is geometry. All knowing is geometry. Our relationship with any sort of higher dimensional intelligence should be one of simple being. That means this is a Mr.Within's recommendation to anybody who is interested in working with their inner realms in any way. You gotta be able to be simple, because the simplicity becomes the connection to all the complex events of the mind that one can experience. You know, I have had moments where I've been like in a park, and it's been like, I don't know, I think maybe after I gave one of these talks where I just sat down and I was drinking tea, like by a park bench, and in that moment I can tell you what was going on through my mind was like a film. You know how when you go to a website, to the right side of the web browser, you can scroll down. So, and you know how if you scroll down quickly, the page just goes down on its own very quickly. It felt like my inner realms had become something where my curiosity to see what was going on in that moment sped up the inner realms imagery content. What that means is the mind is a film on a film. That means the mind is a subjective film. Physical reality is an objective film. You know, the laws of science, they are followed in the objective realm, but in the subjective realm, you know, any person can visualize any object just lifting up into the air and just staying there, right? So in our inner realms, gravity doesn't act on our imagination, but it acts on physical reality on the objective realm. So if we are beyond you know, that recognition that subjects have infinite permission to animate, but objective reality doesn't. You know, your mind becomes compassionate to the only body it has dwelled in so far. You know, and what I mean by that is that you become compassionate to the physical universe as if it is like your younger sibling. Do you know? And based on the level you're at, let's say you're at the level of, you are content and compassionate and care for the advancement of your physical realm, then your mind opens up, right? And for the mind becomes its own older brother when the soul is witness. What I mean by that is like the soul is like the oldest brother, then it's like the middle brother, you know, the mind, and the body, the youngest brother. The youngest brother needs the protection of the two brothers and the information and the wisdom of the two brothers, you know. but it is also the most ignorant. So the body has a level of ignorance where the mind has to defend it, has to protect it, you know. Now, when it comes to the mind, let's say somebody is emotionally breaking down. In some countries there has been war. Can you imagine back in the day how many people were just living in villages and they're like, wait a minute, we don't have any defense systems, and they were invaded by armies, you know. And so it was one of they were pillaged, like the village, it was pillaged by an army or something, you know. So it was one of those things where from a state of just peacefulness suddenly thrown into the ultimate turbulence, you know. And having the capacity, you know, it's as if what is the mindset of a warrior back in the day in ancient Greece fighting in the battlefield. All you have as a being, right, is the ideal of I am going towards the superior, you know, but not in an egoic manner. You know, because the thing about the ego is that the moment the intelligence of the universe listens to the most honest first, I'm telling you, there's something there that when you don't resist nature, you access its higher rhythms. I want to tell you a story. In this story, there's a man who goes into nature, and the story is back in the day. And you can say it is a Vedic story. It is. It has to do with the profoundness of Indian culture, let's say. And so there is this man who suddenly is in society, and society takes him to the brink of an intensity, of an overwhelmment of what is going on in the realm, that this man decides to go into nature. You know, he's had it in this story I'm telling you. And so this man goes into nature, he sits down. He sits down in this grassland, you know, and he goes into this state of inner peace where it's as if all his desires for the past's remodification and the future's upcoming, you know, design, like it's as if all that desire left him, and he was left in nature just being an avatar, you can say. Somebody mentioned that in the comment section. He was being like an avatar of nature. That means he could understand the trees, he could understand the wind, he could understand the voice of everything that is intelligent, because some people feel that a divine relationship with nature is as if like the birds talk to you, you know, the wind talks to you. The spirit of nature animates in incomprehensible ways to you. But what it is, I find, and I'll continue with the story, but is that this person finds allegiance with nature. Meaning that it is a symbiosis with a field of intelligence, not an individual. You know, it's as if we haven't reached that point as human beings to even start being compassionate to collective beings. That means the hardest thing to do, to be compassionate to a space where intelligence was moving through. You know, it is the ultimate, one of the ultimate leaps of mankind. That fear was no longer a distraction. And the divine was no longer an ideology to possess. For why else would the word freedom be there? You know, and the concept of enlightenment, there is the idea of liberation. Liberation means you are free. You are free. The ultimate freedom. You are free. That's what it's trying to reach, but in the attempt of reaching it, how does the mule get the carrot connected to the string and the stick? The mule, as long as it chases it in a vertical dimension, the karma of the realm does not allow it. But the moment the mule lies down on the ground, the carrot falls onto the ground, and it can kind of like move itself towards the carrot. That means in the search for truth, like if you looked at the word truth seeker, truth-seeker, right? So when you get rid of the seeker, what is left? Only truth. And if truth is ultimate freedom, that means the whole attempt of ancient wisdom is to say you are ultimately free from the beginning. For who is looking out of eyes that go beyond them eyes? Beyond, just like how we evolved beyond idol worship, in the future the species will move beyond ideal worship. When it moves beyond ideal worship, it finds itself in a state of direct experiential engagement, and that's when efforts towards the great humanity occur. We are in the pre-phase of the hilariously in the pre-production phase of the great humanity. That means if this was the anime Dragon Ball Z, the species is at like Krillin's power level, but the species needs to go to Goku's kind of god, just to have an anime reference. The species is an idea that, like a flickering candle on a windy, in the middle of a storm, needs to be shielded, right? That means when a species forgets about hope, it has the future. The future has overwhelmed it into paralysis. Violence is a sign of creatures that are so bored that they have not found something better to do. In this race against time, where the true, I don't want to say enemy, but I think it's kind of poetic to do so. That time is the enemy of our enemy. What that means is all of us, regardless of us human beings, whatever difference we have to just come up to the advanced civilization in the future, and in some sense be like, okay, what needs assistance, what needs advancement, the whole thing has to move forward. It's as if like a lion roars and our species hasn't roared yet. I don't know why, like every time I come to give a talk and I talk about the future, that's what I see. Because what else can there be? For how long can we look at an emptiness, that is waiting for us to make the first move? So guys, my attention has come to the chat section. A little breather for me too. Let me see. So welcome Lorna, Jamie, Yusuf, Aziz, Dan, and Jay Topra. Okay, I'm reading everything. Hold on, guys. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Jade Topram says, thoughts on Ram Dass's work. Well, I'm not him, so I cannot speak for him. But so far, how I have perceived Ram Dass was that he was he was like an English microphone for an ancient karma. Okay, I'm going too deep. Ram Dass, I mean, I've listened to a few of his lectures, and he seems like a man who has observed life well. And it was as if there was a human being that catalyzed it in his experience, his guru and whatnot, you know. And then I remember online reading a story about his guru, like this dude who didn't want to bow to the guru, to Ram Dass's guru, like, you know. And the person was like, you know, and he had this, listening to the guru, he had this strange experience. And then one day he sees an apple on the ground. He goes to pick up the apple, and the guru suddenly puts his foot on the guy's head, somehow, some sort of synchronistic coincidence or something. And then the guy's like, oh my God, I bowed to this guru. And so what it is really, it's just human beings are activated by greater insight. And Ram Dass was, in my view, he's an advanced communicator. He did his work well, you know? Because that's really the phase of life we're in. Not to just only sit there and watch, even though the ultimate enlightenment is such, but like to, in some sense, activate the greatest opportunity and also be conscious simultaneously. It's like we can build an advanced civilization and also keep getting enlightened. For me, they were, how would I say it? There's something I gotta tell people, this, people should search this on YouTube. Anyways, guys, to continue, I don't know, so far I hope when I give these talks, I'm kind of giving it like a painter, where I'm splashing different imagery at different parts of the canvas and eventually smoothing out, you know, how the image is so far. I'm just trying to say I'm a human being who has noticed we're all in emptiness. That's freaky, but at the same time it's cool, it's unknown, it's like this endless source of the unknown. That means the world is unknown, there's greater mysteries, people should not be occupied, you know, the human life is wasted if it does not seek its own progress. So in a context of advancement for the civilization, one embarks on the journey of their life. Piloting through karma. Because I'm telling you, sometimes it's easier to say things than to actually do them, because in doing something you transform who you were. In the future, not only will we be staring at a beautiful earth from sky cities, the species will have advanced inner realms and advance outer realms, and then I will feel like, yes, we got a backup system going that's going to solve the problem even after we pass away. And the world is so big and so filled with different types of ideas that create different emotions that when I actually give these talks online, I'm like, and I don't even like market them. Let me tell you why. Because I want to see who naturally gravitates to these talks. You know, that's why the channel's growth in regards to views has been little, because intentionally I was like, let's just test it. It's only once I can do this, where you put the content out there, and you kind of, you know what it was? It's like you put a mirror in the forest and you see different beings come and look into that mirror. Right, so different creatures come and look into that mirror, and when a person is attempting, at least in a lifetime, to share something in a world where everybody's designed to take, you know, as long as we feel we don't have enough, there will be cruelty till the end of time. I will tell you, regardless of how peaceful we act, you know, unless we have figured a solution for global survival. These are key things, you know, because on this planet we don't know what minds are on this world. Do you know there could be so many? In World War II, the death count after was like 85 million people died. It was some tragic number, that vast. And I was like, no way, in that 85 million, how many Einsteins did we lose? You know, how many geniuses, how many athletes, how many advanced human beings did we lose because of the ignorance of greed? So for me, greed is not something that is evil, but it is in some sense a human pattern that is ignoring more of a compassionate, efficient outcome. Because compassion means let the stability of the state of the moment continue. It is a calling to the right resonance, you know. I would like to read for people in this episode something I wrote in 2015. I wrote these kind of strange, not strange, but like these passages to a book called Memories of Starlight. And I want to read a random passage from it, if I can find it. So the passage is 37 of Memories of Starlight. Think of it as a series of essays. Rosary of Planets is the title of this, I don't know, let's call it chapter, essay, whatever. This is an unpublished book I'm reading from. Rosary of Planets. When our arms dissolve into the light, a part of our form still seeks to find its sense of fulfilled control. For heaven, as an idea, was always for lazy men. The true essence of a heavenly gaze is one that sees beyond man's eyes. We always feel we are growing, for there have been some sages whom have forgot the temporal playfully to discover the seriousness that could never be covered with jokes. Some variants of shape allow you to see your own reflection in new ways. Some men feel like patriots and yet could not be more guilty than the terrorists they have put in the terrorists. That was simply another human being. Our ability amplifies as we confronted immediately to see, and guys, I wrote this in 2015 by the way. Our ability amplifies as we confronted immediately to see what more there is to be offered in the moment. Some leaders lead only themselves, for within the trust that moves your gears, the mechanical will always see the divine inspiration of natural law within their design. You may find reality communicating with you, through you, in ways you may think for ages, but never be able to measure. When your infinite eyes sparkle, you shall see that your act of compassion to every being alive was simply training you for the compassion that requires you to work with all separate senses of self at once. The lines may have been drawn and the planes have been shaped, but you are the doorway to everything you know. Once your findings can be found by all men in an instant, simply teachers were the only ones who could give you chaotic lessons. For to push a man out of his face is impossible until he looks at himself. Become as transparent as the mind, for the rosary in your hands and the beads between your fingers hold the secret of the cosmos. Hold the secret of the cosmos, the secret within your grasp. The planets have aligned with your prayer, for the string that keeps everything together was always connected to the needle dancing with your sin, I think. For one single mistake, and the thorn does not wait, the rose in your hand has become your enemy. But could there be a wiser teacher? For the lesson of the lesson was to give itself to the student's ears. None must remain when you are truly here. You know, sometimes I wonder who I was in 2015. To be free means to be able to be. And before the concept of freedom needs to be there, the universe has noticed it so. The future has a potential to be very cruel. The future has a potential to be very compassionate. The future has a potential to be tragic. The future has a potential to be enlightening. The future has a potential to not exist. The future has a potential to be able to aim even beyond the interstellar, to a point where our technologies as a species on this planet advance to such a degree that we have sent a very advanced form of AI in outer space, and this AI goes and finds planets that are inhabitable and makes advanced civilizations on them, solves all the problems of the planet in a just way, you know, with us being able to observe what it does, you know, and that moment, you know, realize that the whole aim of human life, excuse, you know, the way I'm saying it, but is to have sex all over the universe, literally, you know. That's the whole aim of increasing the population and continuing as human beings with the, you know, with the vision of freedom in our eyes. So in the future, AI will go and just makes planets ready for us to live in, and people are just going to be going on interstellar vacations all the time. To observe one's free will expressed simultaneously alongside the laws of nature, which can be said to be the universal will, in accordance to how much personality man has, divinity has a shape. To care for our future is the most divine thing ever. For I would say that if we were being watched by gods or eyes in the sky or anything intelligent, our task is to unfold the greatest performance fathomable by humanity. That is it. You know, that means the whole species goes into renaissance mode, and the idea is to build such an advanced civilization where once you rest in that civilization, everything is taken care of, you know? Do you know how many senior citizens there are in this world where their exits should be comfortable, but it is not? And so an advanced civilization would treat 8 billion people as 8 billion tourists. Every tourist requires the best, highest quality. Because we are in this world once, you know. We should make the advance accessible to all, to then experience greater advancement. That means the smartest thing the evil people on this planet can do is actually to help and put the evil on pause and build an advanced civilization, then be whatever they want in it. You know, that's all that Mr. Within is really asking. You know, and I'm not asking in a sense where I'm saying you have to do it, but I'm saying at some point in life, the meaning of our life is freedom. A freedom that is unconditional. We all seek it. That's hilarious, you know. People have so many desires, but the hidden desire is we all want an advanced, not comfort, I would say, but an advanced continuity. To build a world where, out of the honor for the future, we try to make the least mistakes. It's kind of like chess, you know. In chess, the two sides, one is offensive, one is defensive. So the pieces that are being, let's say the first chess piece moves, you know, and then the second chess piece has to be in defense to that, and it's all about capturing more land and then crushing like the opponent. You know, it's a savage game, you know, but but I would say, so the strategy is that we play defensively. We wait for that which moves offensively to make a mistake, and then we retaliate. Right? This is the strategy. You know, the defensive strategy. You hold the shield up, shield up, shield up. The person hitting with the sword, the shield gets tired, and then you have your ability to express, like, you know. So when it comes to this life, we have to shield ourselves through an honest observation of what is actually going on. That's the greatest shield you can have. You know, to comprehend not the nature of the moment, but also as if you were found as a character in a film, and like, where are you? You know, that is the true mystery. You know, that's the calling of every philosopher, to find an answer that is the ultimate, you know. Because why else should we have questions? You know, at some point it's like, you know, it's like we can have infinite questions. So we're looking for the ultimate question. An ancient thought addressed it. But now we have to build an advanced civilization, but also the best state we can do it is through that enlightened state. Right? So it's for the first time not only the vision of an enlightened society, but that the whole world is becoming a multidimensional airport. So a non-conceptual relationship with the divine, and awareness to your whole moment and how the content in your attention changes. Where the most unknown change takes place in your attention is what we tend to consider as divine. If suddenly somebody, like, let's say somebody was holding a coffee cup and talking to somebody else, on the sidewalk, and suddenly what happens is, like, the person lets go of the coffee cup, but the coffee cup somehow still stays in the air, right? At that point, that would be an unknown variable to the moment of perception. That unknown variable. Is where divinity is being interpreted from. So when an unknown force moves the known, oh my god, that's so divine. When a known force moves the unknown, oh my god, it's man again. It's humanity again. Human beings are moving it. So that discrimination between what is moving you and what you are moving is the whole thing that if we can, I've termed it, like, just so people can relate to it, as Mr. Within's inner realm and outer realmism. So if we can understand this, all the ideological suffering stops, and from a witnessing state, one can make an observant decision that is the efficient possibility. That's why they say patience is a virtue. Sometimes when you're patient, you see more dimensions to something, then you can respond. So that's it. More than that, it would be, if I say anything more than that, what I've said so far, it would be a sort of ideological framework. The whole thing is, I'm trying to say the species is inside a linguistic simulation. When we wake up from the linguistic simulation, it doesn't mean egos are bad. It just means that the self can function consciously. When we say somebody functions unconsciously in their life, that means they're doing something, but they're not fully aware of what they're doing. And to live a completely conscious life means to be 100% aware, but when you go into attempting to be 100% aware and conscious of life, you find the edges of the infinite void. So when you find that, then it's like life goes totally beyond measurement, and you start seeking a living relationship with life, not with the soul. As the poet Rumi would say, the soul of the moment. You seek a living relationship with that. So no longer a belief system, no longer a ritualistic behavior system. It just becomes you recognizing as if the moment is alive, right? It is true mysticism, I would say. This is why yogis went into the forest. But if you were truly aware, it doesn't matter where you are in this life, intelligence is. Right, that's the key. It doesn't matter where the drop is thrown into the ocean, the raindrop. It is all the ocean the moment it is there. So when we have entered life, we are all life. And that is a very profound idea, because it is the complete implosion of the idea of self. So we have to even prepare the species to be able to walk in emptiness towards the advance. All of this is something that a sort of cultural revolution of realizing the best entertainment is the important education that brings about the most advanced state. It's no longer survival of the fittest, it's survival of the efficient. And efficiency means the most information, not the most information, because it's not all about information. Some people think having more information is like the better thing. No, it's about, because of whatever information you get, you have to utilize it, or it's occupying space in your mind. So what it is that you filter reality through honesty. This honesty is like you abiding by your nature, so you get to experience your own karma rather than your interlinked karma with the physical outer, this whole world should be a giant research project, but how many people are like, not interested into knowing what we really are, If reality is a simulation, you should as a person be freaking out. It's like, you telling me I've lived this whole life in like the imagination of emptiness, And the Buddha's like, yeah, son, relax. I never finished the story, but this man goes into nature in this grassland. He sits there for such a long time that a school of people find him somehow, and he has like 500 disciples. This is back in the day, And so this man automatically, through nature's synchronistic advancement, becomes like this guru for these 500 people in nature, and his whole teaching is like, sit down and be peaceful. That's his whole teaching. He's like, just sit down in nature and be peaceful. Just look around, And all those 500 people had come there in a very vicious, wild world to cultivate gentleness, to cultivate peacefulness, to see, is it even possible to have inner peace in a changing world where we're emotionally and ideologically attached to? So something happens that winter is coming, in the story, and so this, you can say, guru figure, this mentor figure, he in some sense realizes that the king of the empire at that time has sent him an offer and has said, hey, wise enlightened sage with 500 disciples, why don't you and your 500 disciples for winter coming to my kingdom, and I'll serve your serve you guys food and shelter and all this, and at the same time come here and have a few conversations with me, And so what happens is, when winter comes, somebody in one of the guru's disciples that looks like Jon Snow says, let's get out of here. Sorry guys, I'm animating this too much. But whatever happened, I forgot to mention a part of the story. So out of these 500 disciples of this guru figure, of this, let's say, kind of like Zen master-like person, what happens is, there's one disciple that always smiles, and all the 499 disciples are like, how's this guy smiling all the time? How's this guy as peaceful, like close to the peacefulness of like the guru? And they called him the smiling disciple. Whatever would happen, this guy would smile. Now what happens is that when they go into the kingdom, all the 500 disciples, they go, to some part of the palace, and the sage has a conversation, with the king, right? Oh, sorry, I messed up the story, actually. They go in there, and they're all served by the kingdom. The king is not there. The king is too busy, fending the way the story was written was that the king was fending off his wives, which wanted to advance their own princes, to the throne. So this king had a lot of problems, and he was so busy that he doesn't get a chance to come and see this sage and the 500 disciples. So what happens is, when winter is over and they're about to leave, suddenly the king has time for the sage, and he comes and he sees the sage is about to leave with the disciples, and he says, hey sage, you're an old man, why don't you stay in my kingdom and also be part of my council, and give me advice and whatnot, something like that. So what happens is, this guru eventually sees like the reality, and he tells the smiling disciple, to take the 499 disciples and to go into nature, and he looks at all of them and he says, hey, cultivate, ultimate inner peace. That's it. That's just go towards the most peaceful state possible as a being in nature. That is really also the spark of the polymath that occurs like that. So the smiling disciple takes the 499 other disciples, and he becomes like the new guru figure, and they go into nature, and their inner peace, as the story goes, their inner peace grows, increases, doubles, throughout the years. And the years pass, and it becomes winter. One winter they decide to come back to the kingdom. When they come back to the kingdom, so the sage has his own palace room and everything like that, this epic room where he's like, I don't know, the king is like, has him as his advisory or something, And so the smiling sage who has become the guru, he goes to see his old master, the person who the whole inner peace when the forest movement began for them, So he goes to his master, and they're having tea, sitting down in like the sage's room, and suddenly the king walks in. And actually, before the king walks in, they're having casual conversation, and whatever the sage says, in a very happy way, the smiling disciple says, "Oh, what happiness! Oh, what happiness!" And at the same time, the king walks into the room where the smiling disciple and the, old sage are having tea, right? So the king comes in, and this smiling disciple, the sage kind of honors the king, nods his head towards the king, but the smiling disciple completely ignores the king and is just talking to the sage and saying, "Oh, what happiness." And the king is like, "What the hell just happened?" Because the king has has this has an incredible ego. So the king gets angry, and he looks at the sage and he says, "Sage, this disciple of yours seems to have ate so much that he's become stupid, and he's become lazy and hasn't realized, the significance of a king, and he's getting angry, at the disciple that has ignored him, the smiling disciple that ignored the king when he came into the room." The sage looks at the king and says, "King, have patience, because let me tell you why this smiling disciple is not bowing, or is honoring you like that." Because the sage says, this smiling disciple has found a supreme happiness, a supreme state of happiness, pure happiness, unconditional happiness, And the king is like, "So what?" It's like, "Do you see this giant piece of metal I'm carrying around on my head?" The king doesn't say that, So pretty much the sage has stopped the king when he said that your disciple is lazy and whatever, And the sage says to the king, just to say it completely, the sage says, "King, the reason this man is happy is because there was a time where he was escorted by armored knights, There was a time where he was a king himself, but he renounced that kingly life and in some sense found a happiness, a state of being that transcended whatever physical conditional thing of the inner realms." So the smiling disciple, this whole time that he was smiling, is because he was a king. He was an emperor. He had nothing to fear, but he had renounced the throne to come and live the simple life, to see what is this, hidden truth. Bees build the beehive through a context of royalty, and latest royalty is the future. We all live for the future, and whether we like it or not, we have to. It is the privilege of it. Whatever God the attention finds, to identify it as an archetype, to be able to have a manner of discrimination where you're like, okay, this is the conscious sphere of my awareness. All the things that I don't know in this world are in the unconscious, which encapsulates this conscious sphere of my knowing. And And then one can have a relationship with their own unconscious. They can, just like how you don't think about your breathing or your heart and it just naturally beats, similarly you can go into states of creative expression where you're just being, and from the simplicity of that being there is a connection to, in a stable way, observe all the inner event, all the ways that thoughts arise and come and go, you know. I'm going to read some quotes from this yogi named Papaji, and then I'll end it off. Whoever wants to tune out now, thank you for listening. And please consider becoming a member and supporting the project. Okay, Papaji quotes. Papaji is, to me, he was a lantern in the dark. That means he was a very bright. He was a very. He had a very direct, clear precision on what reality is. You know. Papaji says, "Simply sit down." So this is the quote tunnel part of the episode, guys. Papaji says, "Simply sit down. Keep quiet for one moment. This is the moment you need. This is the moment of rest. Keep quiet." Excuse me. Keep quiet for a moment without going to the past, and you will find relaxation. Papaji says, if there is peace in your mind, you will find peace with everybody. If your mind... So first find peace within, and you will see this inner peace reflected everywhere else. You are this peace. Papaji says that ocean of eternal peace is you. What is the difficulty that we suffer from? It is that we seek peace elsewhere and do not experience that we are peace incarnate itself. If you see the illusion, you're enlightened. But if you think that you're enlightened, you are the illusion, Papaji says. Papaji says, what is purification of the mind? No thought. This thoughtless mind, sattvic mind, no mind, can be called consciousness itself, self itself. Thoughts are, Papaji says, thoughts are impediments to seeing your own face. Don't give rise to any thought and discover who you are. Papaji says if you address the mind within quotations, Papaji says mind is nothing but thought. You can separate thought itself from the mind. Papaji says whatever comes, let it come. What stays, let it stay. What goes, let it go. This is also something Sri Ramana Maharshi has also said. Papaji says all that you are attached to, all that you love, all that you know, someday will be gone. Knowing this, and that the world is your mind which you create, play in, and suffer from, is known as discrimination. Discriminate between the real and the unreal. The known is unreal and will come and go. Stay with the unknown, the unchanging, the truth. Papaji says, who is journeying for freedom? The one who is already free. Just get rid of the concept. I am the concept. I am the body separate from the source. You return to what you always were. Papaji says nothing arises without self. All existence is one in one's own self. Papaji says you have to be very careful to be vigilant, to see what is coming from the mind and to see the happiness that is coming from the self. Thoughts are impediments to seeing your own face. Don't give rise to any thought and discover who you are. Excuse me, guys, my attention was caught by something. Papa G says, don't go to the past. The past is a problem. The past is mind. When you go to the past, all will be problems, so don't go to the past. The mind is the past, and the past is a graveyard. Don't go to the graveyard. Papa G says, when he says it's a graveyard, that means everything in the past has already happened and it's done. Like its life cycle is complete. Papa G says, when we use the word I in quotations, there's ego, then there's the mind, then there's a body, then there are senses, then there are sense objects, and then all manifestation arises. Papa G says meditation is to effortlessly turn the mind toward that energy which energizes mind. Alright. Papa G says reality is that which always exists and never changes. Papa G says the self alone can give you happiness. All happiness is from the self. All trouble, sorrow, and suffering is from the mind. That means when they said free your mind, people were like, yo, do we have to be like Neo from the Matrix? And it's like, no. it's easier. It's an instant. In an instant, the dude realized he could dodge bullets. So what that means, is that human beings in an instant update. So if you instantly realize that the mind is just identification as a persona, even from a Jungian fashion, we can look at this. Beyond the mind, freedom is. Papa G says anything that you have imposed to be unhappy, to be bound, is a concept. It is an imaginary concept, so give it away without being attached to them in any way. Papa G says the silence that I speak about is neither meditating nor sitting quiet. The silence that I speak about and the mind is still running about here and there and everywhere. Whatever internal phenomena or internal object one finds, which we call a subject, it's like have this attitude, as Papa G and Ramana Maharshi were saying, whatever comes, let it come, whatever goes, let it go, see what remains. This attitude is key in being able to not be an idea and then having an access to see all ideas at once, right? This cowbird is on a branch and then the bird flies into the sky. Every person who activates this sort of observance within, in some sense you will notice that the world is so fascinating, it will automatically guide you. Greatness was here before we were. Thanks for listening. Much blessings and namaste.